So now the draft constitution was complete and it was put in front of the Constituent Assembly for debates on 4th November 1948. So this draft constitution was the bulkiest constitution in the whole world. It consisted of 395 articles in 22 parts with 8 schedules, while now in 2023 it consists of 448 articles in 25 parts with 12 schedules. Okay. So now B.R. Ambedkar started discussing the contents of the constitution. For example, the form of government, the type of government that the draft constitution adopted. So he said that there are two types of governments. One is parliamentary system and the other is the presidential system. And the draft constitution has adopted the parliamentary system of government. Now, to get a clarity on what these are, let us look at the differences between both of them. Okay. In the parliamentary system, the president is the head of the state but not the executive. While in the presidential system, the president is the head of the executive. Whereas the same head of the executive here is the prime minister. Okay. The president, so he is the head of the state but not the executive, while here he is the head of the executive. Here in parliamentary system, the president he can dismiss his ministers only on the recommendations of the prime minister. He cannot dismiss directly, while here the president has the power to dismiss the ministers without anyone's authority. Okay. Next, in parliamentary system, president is the constitutional head but the real power is with the prime minister. So he is not the head of the executive and he does not have real power invested in him here. While in the presidential system, the president is the real executive and he has the power in him, invested in him. Then the president generally is bound by the advice of his ministers. He cannot just ignore the advice of his ministers. While here, the president is not bound to accept any advice from his ministers or from his ministers. Here, the executive is responsible to legislatives, while in presidential system, the executive is not responsible. Okay. So these are the basic fundamental differences between the parliamentary and presidential system. For example, we see the presidential system in USA, while the parliamentary system is adopted by India now. So after the parliamentary presidential type of governments, there is another kind of type of governments which relates the central government to the regional governments. So there are two kinds of types of governments, types of systems that are there. One is the federal constitution, federal system, or the unitary system. Let us look at the definitions of these. Federal system states that the provinces or territories enjoy some rights as are available to the independent states. Okay. Whereas the unitary system has a single power which is known as the central government and it controls the whole government. Now, Indian constitution does not have a single, either only unitary or only federal. It has features of both of them. So let us look at the features of the Indian constitution that are present, that are of unitary system as well as that are of the federal system, right? First, let us look at the federal system. We have dual polity. Okay. What does dual polity mean? It means there are two branches of governments, one at the central level and one at the state level. We also have division of powers. So the subjects, the matters are divided into three lists: the union list, which is controlled by the center, which is under the center; the state list, which is under the state; and the concurrent list, which is under both the state and the center. Okay. So here we see these two features are of the federal system which are in the Indian constitution. Also, a unitary feature of this is that the center is strong, which means in the concurrent list, if a state makes a law which is opposite, which is contradicting a central law, then the central law prevails. Only the central law is valid. That is why a strong center is here. And next, coming to the federal other features, we have a written constitution. Okay. And the constitution is rigid, which means there are a few there are a few subjects of the constitution which cannot be amended very easily. Okay, it requires center as well as state approval to amend those things. That's why it's rigid. Whereas when we come to the unitary, the constitution is flexible here, which means there are a few subjects of the constitution, of the Indian constitution, which can be easily amended only by the center itself. So we have a few areas of the constitution which is flexible, that is unitary, and there are a few which are rigid, that is federal. Okay. Also, supremacy of the constitution. The constitution is supreme. There are a few subjects of the constitution which cannot be changed by the center or the state whatsoever. It's supreme. Okay. Also, in our constitution is a single constitution, which means the states do not have their own separate constitutions. All India has a single constitution and it is abided by it. This is a feature of the unitary system. Okay. Also, coming here, we have a single citizenship, which means all of us are Indians and we do not have a citizenship of the state. And emergency provisions, which means under emergency conditions which are imposed by the center has all the power and the states do not have power. This is a feature of the unitary system. Okay. Coming here, we have a bicameral legislature, which means we have two houses, a Lok Sabha and a Rajya Sabha. This is a feature of federal system. And we have independent judiciary. Sorry. So we have independent judiciary, which means that the judiciary, the courts are independent of the legislature. And in here we also, the judiciary is also integrated, which means that even though the judiciary is independent of the legislature, there are levels of it. A Supreme Court and a High Court and the other courts. The Supreme Court is the supreme. All the other courts come under it. It can overrule any other laws, any other court decisions. Okay, so that's integrated judiciary. Also, we have an integrated election mechanism, which also works the same. The states' elections are also conducted by the Election Commission, which is at the center. Okay. Now, all India services, UPSC, IAS, IPS, these jobs are conducted by the center, are done by the center, whereas the state also have a right to form its own PSC, Public Service Commission. So we have both on all India services, UPSC, as well as individual state PSCs. So one feature from the unitary and one feature from the federal. So these are the features of our constitution which are of the federal system as well as the unitary system.